5 months ago, I uploaded a relatively popular video in terms of liminal elitist standards called the Frutiger Trio, and I'm going to be honest, I forgot about it, but almost half a year later, I got this comment. Ooh, I can't wait to see part 2, and that ignited something. So here we are today, 2026, and not much has changed on this channel, I'm going to be honest. As a matter of fact, before we get into the video of me describing every single aesthetic on here, I just want to describe what a Frutiger family even is. The Frutiger family is a group of aesthetics that have some correlation to the popular Frutiger Aero, which has seen a spike in popularity in recent years. Well, that's just a simple understanding of what it is. And let's just say, the mother of this family was probably dating Genghis Khan, because that's a lot of kids. And we're going to talk about every single one, baby. I'm probably going to talk about one aesthetic longer than the other because some of these get real niche. Like, what even is a Tranquil Serenity? Well, I'm going to learn it with you because I've never heard of half of these. Alright, we can go ahead and get to the first one, and one that everybody watching this video has definitely heard of. Ah yes, Frutiger Aero. This is probably one of the most popular aesthetics in recent years, and also one of the ones that I glaze the most. Out of the almost 50 videos I have posted, I'm pretty sure at least half of them have at least me mentioning Frutiger Aero. It's that, like, I glaze it that much, that's crazy. Frutiger Aero was a prominent aesthetic that lasted from 2004 all the way to 2013. And almost every single thing from the mid to late 2000s had this aesthetic. Boom! Windows Vista, 2007. Boom! Nintendo Wii, like 2005 or something. Boom! Windows XP, which was actually Proto-Aero, and I just made that word up. It means before Frutiger Aero really took off. Funniest thing is, it was never called Frutiger Aero. In fact, it was not a name until 10 years after its prime. It's often characterized by its nature-themed, bright skies and stuff, a very clear aesthetic. It was named after Adrian Frutiger, who basically made this font called, well, Frutiger, and it's pretty generic, but it was often utilized with, Frutiger Aero, so that's why it was named that. Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about this aesthetic, because I have in, 25 other videos, but you can look at many other videos who can explain it way better than I. And it ultimately ended in 2013 whenever this new design called the flat design took place, and I kind of have a disliking for it. The one that I'm about to talk about, in my opinion, has some better lore than Frutiger Aero. I said it, and you probably don't know what it is unless you skipped to this timestamp, but I think it has some better lore behind it. We can go ahead and get to it. Alright, so picture this. It's 1997, and the new millennium is only a few years away, so people would like to predict what would happen during that. Was the world going to end the second we hit 2000? People actually believed that, by the way, and I might make a separate video on it. Would nothing happen? Most of the time, 26 years later. Or was everything going to be robot? Well, we can look at the robot side of things. Y2K Futurism emerged whenever people were thinking pretty optimistically about 2000. Many people thought it was going to be really colorful and stuff. It was pretty cool. Futurism is known for its, colorful viewings and its use of CGI, which was also rapidly advancing for its time. After the success of grunge in the late 80s to the mid 90s, Y2K Futurism took that place. The aesthetic began to decline whenever 2000 struck due to many different events happening at the time. I feel like Y2K Futurism walked so Frutiger Aero could fly. It still looks pretty good to this day. The iMac G3 is basically one of the examples of the technology that inspired this, and I don't know why I did not know about this computer's existence before now. This is a beautiful piece of art. Well, we just talked about Y2K Futurism, so the next two we're going to talk about are basically bigger subgenres of Frutiger Aero. Chances are you've probably heard about both of these different types of arrows. And yeah, you already know what I'm about to talk about if you have. I'm going to be pretty blunt with the meaning of this. So anyways, Frutiger Aero was an aesthetic that started in the late 2000s. When looking at the aesthetic, you can notice the monochrome background, the music-related themes in most of the pictures, and bright colors. Brighter colors like green, orange, pink. It had basically all of those. And some pictures even have nature-inspired stuff. The term Metro came from the design language by Microsoft, so something kind of like this. Many people call this aesthetic the humanist maximalism peak. One of the main pieces of technology that basically defined this was the Xbox 360, specifically the old dashboard. Now, I feel like this aesthetic is a little bit further away from Frutiger Aero, but you want to know something that is kind of close to Frutiger Aero? The name of this aesthetic is, well, Frutiger Eco. Now you might be thinking, what's the difference between Aero and Eco? Well, Eco focuses on the more environmentalism of this aesthetic, so there's that. Unlike Metro, Eco and Aero basically got popular at the same time, and they were birthed at the same time. I guess Frutiger Eco is a more greener arrow, and as I said, it focuses on the more environmentalism and eco-friendly sides of Frutiger Aero. There is something that all three of these aesthetics have in common: Eco, Aero, and Metro. They all died at the same time. So the big three of Frutigers, they all mainly revolve around, well, maximalism. And whenever minimalism took place in the early 2010s, it started to lose traction. Now, I'm going to be honest, my majestic little viewer, I don't really get as stimulated as other people do whenever they look at these aesthetics, but this one gives me the most stimuli. That sounds kind of crazy, but... So we talked about basically the most popular and mainstream aesthetics so far, so we're going to move a little bit closer towards the niche side, but it's still going to be relatively popular if you ask the right people. So in the mid-2000s, people just suddenly realized, oh wait, we can use vector tools to make stuff. So people decided to manipulate that and create pretty psychedelic pieces of art. It coexisted along with Frutiger Aero, because of course it did. The style is also related to McBling, and a lot of these aesthetics are pretty related to each other, because, you know, it's basically a family, but we're going to get to most of the aesthetics later, like McBling. This aesthetic focuses on more maximalist stuff with psychedelia, and the aesthetic is pretty prominent within commercials and stuff. You can see it quite a bit, and graphic design. And before we move on, I just wanted to say that I won't be doing as much talking as we get more niche, because, you know, you'll see it go from like a minute to only 30 seconds per aesthetic, I guess you could say, and yeah, I just wanted to mention that out. So has anyone here ever heard of older brother core? Well, it's basically the more edgier side of nostalgia, and I might also talk about that in a separate video, but I feel like this one perfectly encaptures what older brother core is. And I'm talking about the more gaming side of older brother core with hits like the 01 Xbox. In the dark arrow aesthetic, the first thing you notice is that it's, well, dark. This aesthetic also focuses on the more minimalist side of things, which basically led to the decline of Frutiger Aero. Matter of fact, this aesthetic lasted a little bit longer than all the other arrows, and it only ended about 10 years ago because flat design. I guess flat design's the ruiner of everything. Which image are you taking, gang? Don't be in the minority, be perfectly honest. If you've made it this far into the video, comment that down. That may seem like I'm trying to put this into the algorithm, but I'm being truly honest. Which one do you prefer more? Both Dark Arrow and Frutiger Aero are basically the exact same thing. Don't believe me? This is what the Frutiger Aero related Wii looks like. It's the generic white one. Now look at the black Wii. And it's a little bit more Dark Arrow. Alright, I don't really have an outro for this one, so we can go ahead and move on to the next one. Now, this aesthetic is a little bit more modern than all the other ones that I'm about to talk about. And I find this one really interesting. Neo-Aero is basically a revival of Frutiger Aero, and it's more modern, being in the 2020s. Instead of being used in absolutely everything like computers and stuff, Neo-Aero is used in memes and cover art. This aesthetic is a part of a myth named the 20-year nostalgia cycle, where basically every 20 years, the newer generation discovers old pop culture and, just tries to trend set. It's a certainly interesting phenomenon, and plus, there's not really that much to say other than that. And I kind of like how it is getting popular over the years. Now, I'm about to talk about one of my personal favorite ones, and oh my gosh, it's so peak. Cleancore is, as the name implies, a very clean aesthetic. This aesthetic really got popular in 2020 whenever the pandemic hit, when people were trying to be as clean as possible. I can't really vividly remember this being popular, mainly because I don't think I was in the best place financially. I'm not going to go too into detail on what that was, so yeah. There are two main types of cleancore, high and low, but I'm going to explain them pretty quick. So, low cleancore focuses on the nostalgic childhood parts, like the clean, you know what I'm talking about. But the opposite of that, well, it's basically like actual cleaning, like antibacteria stuff. A lot of products do have this aesthetic, cleancore, like Febreze, Colgate. Those are the only ones I can name off the top of my head, but you know what I mean. Alright, let's get to the next one. Honestly, I don't have a sound effect for this. Alright, after reading about this one's pretty interesting. Skeuomorphism basically describes whenever digital stuff tries to replicate its real-life counterpart. Take example, the old Instagram logo. Well, it's trying to look like a camera. Simple. And like even before the digital term, it has been used way longer before that. Just imagine old stuff trying to replicate even older stuff. That's how I can imagine it and explain it. And it's known for its realistic designs. And that's basically all I have to say about this, honestly. McBling is more of a fashion trend, if anything, but hey, that's never stopped me from making a video about it. It began right on the dot in the year 2000, and it ended in the late 2000s. It basically overlapped with all the other popular aesthetics that I've talked about. Hip-hop is primarily associated with McBling, I guess you could say, and McBling was also inspired by many different pop stars from that time, like Britney Spears and stuff. While looking at McBling's wiki, I noticed something. It started and ended whenever, U.S. events happened. It started whenever 9/11 happened and ended whenever the Great Recession happened, which, for those who haven't been in America, it's basically just an economic depression. Over the recent years, we have seen a pretty big revival in McBling and stuff, you know what I'm talking about? The aesthetic is mostly associated with, the color pink. There's also many other vibrant colors associated with McBling, but at the end of the day, it's just mainly pink. And by the way, from now on, I'll stop doing those interludes, I guess you could say, where I blast the sound effects in your ear. So I'm just going to go ahead and say the next one is, abstract tech. Now, abstract tech is another generic technological aesthetic, but it has different circuit patterns, binary codes, and, the image I just showed you. The aesthetic can be found in more modern sci-fi with all the digital stuff and pretty futuristic movies like Tron. I'm pretty sure Ready Player One, but I'm not sure. Early depictions of abstract tech came from the early 80s with, the movie Tron. And from there, it basically became a common trope to use blue. I don't know why. Well, probably because it does look kind of futuristic, but... By the way, did I just answer my own question in a sentence? I feel like this is also one of the longest lasting aesthetics, because I still see this in so many more sci-fi movies, and it's been around basically since the 80s, as I said, and it's just been, staying strong. The next one we will be talking about is called Helvetica, if I'm pronouncing that correct. Aqua Aero. And remember at the beginning of this video whenever I said the word proto? Well, I feel like this is basically a fancier way of saying that. because Helvetica Aqua Aero is a mix between Y2K Futurism and Frutiger Aero, and it basically became a thing before Frutiger Aero. And since it looks so childish and it is child friendly, it was basically implemented everywhere to give it that, feel. This aesthetic is also very prominent in the meme culture, because the song named Symphony really went viral back in 2024, and you've heard the part, I just wanna be part of your symphony. Oh my gosh, that was such a high note. And people put captions on this exact picture, which I find kind of hilarious. Or this picture that I have saved on my camera roll. Oh my gosh, this might be like top 10 photos of all time. I guess you could say this aesthetic also focuses on the more ocean parts of Frutiger Aero. Aero, what? What? Yo, heck nah, I'm skipping to the next one. Technozen is an aesthetic that was largely inspired by the mid-2000s and Japanese technology. It is described as a sub-aesthetic of Frutiger Aero. Technozen was designed to look professional while also looking kind of cute. I'm not a Japan glazer, by the way, guys. Please don't assume that. Technozen is not only prominent in images, it's also prominent in music, like the Wii main menu music. I know this is Wii Sports, but I don't care. I like this one because there are so many related things to Technozen. Games like the Wii Fit. And by the way, if you're watching this, the game employee, can I please get my Wii balance board that I paid $20 for? This Honda Asimo, when did they make a robot again? And you can imagine many different things. I don't know, I don't really have as much to say about this anymore. I'm just trying to make this section at least a minute long. Anyways, we can go to the next one. Anyways, let's get niche. Let's get micro. Let's get underground. I know the section in this video says Cyber Glacier, but I'm just going to call it Frutiger Glacier from now on. Frutiger Glacier is a sub-aesthetic that was also fan-made, and it mainly revolves around, well, Frutiger Aero, but it focuses on the more wintry sides of Frutiger Aero, and it also incorporates some elements of Y2K Futurism. Honestly, I see the Y2K Futurism in it. Basically, all of the pictures of Frutiger Glacier only have a few colors, being blue, white, and clear. People on the wiki are debating if it should get its own page, so I didn't look at any Wikipedia article. Well, not directly Wikipedia, but you know what I mean. I personally think it should, but it's a matter of personal opinions, I guess. Anyways, the next one we will be talking about is Vectorheart. The aesthetic emerged in the 1990s whenever, well, it's kind of hard to define where it came from, but many different brands basically pioneered it, I guess you could say. The aesthetic uses high contrast colors and futuristic elements, I guess you could say. And it's kind of different from all the other vectors because most of the other vectors basically use flowers. I don't really see a lot of flowers in this. This aesthetic got popular in the, well, early 2000s and it ended in the early 2010s. So basically like 75% of the other aesthetics on here. It's because of that stupid flat design. Anyways, we can go from slightly futuristic to full-on futuristic. This is DORfic, which is actually an acronym for Daylight Orange, Red, Futurism, and Graphic. I don't look at scripts, by the way, guys. That was just completely out of nowhere. This aesthetic is basically similar to abstract tech, which I talked about I don't know how long ago. And it's basically more of an industrial side of Frutiger Aero. DORfic originated from that, 1960s retrofuturism aesthetic, which I might talk about in another video. For every time I said I talk about this in another video, or I will, I would probably have $3 if I made it into $1, which is not that much, but it's still kind of crazy that it happened like 3 or 4 other times. This aesthetic got popular in the mid-2000s, and I'm pretty sure, died off in the 2010s. And the last year of usage was basically 2016, like mainstream usage at least. It focuses more on minimalism and has some relation to Dark Aero rather than Frutiger Aero, which honestly, no crap. You could also see this being used in like so many different shooter games like Halo, Doom, even Super Hot for VR, which is not a shooter, but it still has some guns in it. And honestly, if you look deep enough, you can still find so many different types of media with this aesthetic, so I still say it's been around for a while. And if you haven't figured it out yet, it uses so much orange and red. Well, it's literally in the name. Speaking of acronyms, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. This is RCU. RCU stands for Renewable Corporate Utopia, and its decade of origin is the early 2010s. It basically emerged whenever, climate change and global warming was pretty bad. It still is, but I don't even know. It's basically another one of those, here's a concept of what the future would look like if we didn't have all these problems kind of thing. And it basically emerged after Frutiger Aero died out. And it also looks pretty similar to Frutiger Eco, and they share the same message, I guess you could say. It's a mix between Frutiger Aero and corporate. Speaking of corporate, that's the next one we're about to talk about. Judging by the name alone, you should already know about this. Well, if you don't, somehow it's basically just business stuff. Professional suit and ties, and you know what I'm talking about. This aesthetic also has some familiarity to corporate Memphis. Oh, it hurts to look at. That's the sound that I imagine looking at that. That's actually hard to look at. Completely unrelated, but whenever I was searching up this, my AI started geeking for some reason. I don't know why. And also, I feel like this is the longest lasting aesthetic, because this aesthetic has been around for ever since business emerged, I guess you could say. I feel like this is also the most common aesthetic. Everybody has seen this at least 100 times. Like, everybody with a job has seen this at least once. Like, yeah. You know what? Let's get to the more niche side of things. The rest of this video is just going to be me talking about the more unknown stuff. Way more unknown than the ones I've already talked about. This is Urbling, and unlike McBling, which focuses on the more popish and bling art style, this one focuses on a more urban style, along with a more grungy look. And right off the bat, you can see basically all this, like, it looks graffitied because it is inspired by pop graffiti and all that, or graffiti pop. Just like DORfic, you could almost see this everywhere in the mid-2000s, and you know what I'm talking about. Oh, and by the way, guys, before we move on to the next one, I just want to say I might be moving through these a little bit quicker, and I'm trying to get it to the 30-minute mark at least, so there's that. I've talked about a lot of robot aesthetics and like futuristic aesthetics in this video so far, but I feel like this one's the most hardcore out of all of them. This is Metalheart, and it was pretty popular from the mid-1990s to the early 2000s, or mid-2000s, and it succeeded from Cyberdelia. The aesthetic peaked in the early 2000s, as I said, and it basically got oversaturated and became all the other bling aesthetics that I've talked about so far. The term Metalheart got its name from the 2001 book of the same title, and it looks pretty well received by the public eye. We can take a break from all the cyber stuff, and let's go back to the Frutiger. This is Frutiger Aurora, and it focuses on the more atmospheric sides of Frutiger Aero. It also has some similarity to abstract tech, but according to the wiki, but I don't really see it personally. You can see this aesthetic basically anywhere in the wintry side of things, or like Windows 7 or Windows Vista backgrounds. Speaking of Windows Vista, that's where this Aurora basically got really popular, because that's basically the magnum opus of it. Each of these images only have one singular type of color that they mainly focus on, but it basically represents it perfectly, I'm going to be honest. Next up is Recession Pop, aka Electropop 08, as it says on the section of this video. This aesthetic came from the Great Recession, which we talked about, the economic depression from the US and all that, and it ended in 2013. It gained popularity back in 2024 after it was coined on TikTok or whatever. And you can see this being used in many different types of pop culture music. In terms of music, it's basically still being used today, and it's pretty, nostalgic, I guess you could say, because how 80s it looks, retro and all that. So anyways, remember at the beginning of the video whenever I said something about Tranquil Serenity and like how weird it's gonna be? Well, we are at that point now. It's basically just Frutiger Zen. There are so many Frutiger, well, no crap, Limit Elitist. It's basically called the Frutiger Family. This is another Frutiger related aesthetic that does overlap with Y2K Futurism, and you could definitely see that in some of these pictures. This aesthetic is supposed to look pretty peaceful, and oh boy does it deliver. It does deliver really good. Okay, that sounded kind of creepy. But it's basically based on East Asian meditation practices. It's known for looking very saturated and all of that, and it does use heavy use of CGI. Anyways, I've talked about a lot of Frutigers on here, so we can go ahead and move on to something that's kind of different from all the other ones, to say the least. Superflat Pop's what we're going to be talking about, and it started around the mid-2000s, and it ended around the early 2010s, inspired by, I forgot his name's movement, where everything was kind of kawaii-related. You could see this being used in so many shows from around that era, like Wow Wow Wubsy. Goated show, by the way. Goated show. And The Amazing World of Gumball, goated show. Goated show. And it has similarities to basically all the other ones that we have talked about leading up to this point, so there's that. It was coined in the 2000s whenever that dude that I talked about, that I honestly forgot about his name. He decided to make this art style, which he implemented in different types of mangas and stuff from around that era. So I know a lot of y'all are pretty familiar with this aesthetic. Alright, this next one I'm about to talk about, oh god, whenever I searched it up on the wiki, y'all are some freaky leaks, because Safe Search basically got on. Oh my gosh. I'm not going to show you any images because I just had the biggest neuron activation when looking at them, but just notice that like 2000s like Nico aesthetic, kind of like the one that we talked about last time, like Hatsune Miku, you know what I'm talking about. The next aesthetic I'm going to talk about is more of a meme aesthetic, but it's still worth mentioning. This is Fotonight Web, and it is basically making fun of Frutiger Aero, I believe. It was basically coined from like a Reddit post where someone tried to recall something from a dream, but it was kind of hilarious, so I guess people just made a joke out of that. It's kind of funny. I'm just going to say it now, but I'm speedrunning through the rest of these. I don't care what anybody else says. Bright Tertiaries is kind of like if Frutiger Aero and corporate Memphis, not corporate Memphis, but just corporate as a total had a kid, because it's Frutiger Aero, but it looked a little bit more professional, and it was implemented on every single thing business related in the 2000s, I guess to attract more people. Then up next is this thing called Funky Seasons. It's kind of like 4 colors, which I was going to talk about, but not currently, and it's pretty funky looking, and it has many different, you know what I'm talking about, like the iPod ads from the 2000s, kind of like that. Up next is Hands Up, which is a music genre that was used by content creators in the mid-2000s. It's basically electronic music, which is put at a mid-tempo. You know what I'm talking about? That like generic, like... Yeah. Also, by the way, if there are any electronic, like, remixers, can you please make... into like some beat that goes hard? You can like at me or something on YouTube. There's that. I don't know why. And now for the nichest of all, Xpiritualism, which is pretty simple to explain, I'm gonna be honest. It's basically just an art style from the mid 2000s, and it has most elements of like early internet culture, you know what I'm talking about? And yeah, there's that. Whew, alright. Well, that was easily my like longest video in Limit Elitist history, and that's saying something because I've uploaded a 22-minute video from like a couple of months ago, and I just decided to beat it out like this. This is my... Wait a minute, that sounded kind of crazy. This is going to be my last video before like not winter break, but you know, the snowstorm ends, because, you know, heck, this is like a 30-minute video. So anyways, if you enjoyed this video, you can watch many more. I'm not going to pressure you to subscribe, but I'd really appreciate it. And yeah, I guess I'll see you in the next video.